international trade, though they postponed privatization of the state-owned sector until the mid-1990s. One consequence of the gradualist approach to create disparate product opportunities for those outside the state-controlled economy, allowing the entrepreneurial-minded to seek private profit independent of the state's allocation of raw materials and manufacturing equipment. In searching for opportunities around which to launch a private enterprise, swarms of entrepreneurs experimented with management innovations that enabled them to bypass central planning and to secure their own upstream materials and downstream channels. Neither the absence of a legal or regulatory framework for private enterprises, nor the challenges in accessing scarce government-controlled resources thwarted the would-be capitalists. By the time private enterprise finally received constitutional protection in 2004, guaranteeing equal status with government-owned firms, and legal protection in 2007 with China's first property rights law, some 5.5 million private companies were already up and running with 120 million workers. In an emergent process that academic researchers Victor Ni and Sonia Opper aptly characterized as capitalism from below, private manufacturing arose in 3 phases. In the first phase, a gradual replacement of central planning by market mechanisms resulted in a power shift from state bureaucrats and government agencies to private producers. Entrepreneurs faced a widened set of choices, allowing them to experiment with new forms of production. They also informally developed new arrangements for commerce outside the reach of state planning. In the second phase, an expanding free market generated incentives for business innovations as rewards came increasingly from market performance rather than government connections. Now, private capital markets, free labor movements, industrial clusters, and distribution networks of their own making enabled private entrepreneurs to more readily surmount the daunting barriers to market entry. Despite lingering discriminatory treatment by the state and low social status, private firms grew faster than state-owned enterprises, and in time, the bulk of China's urban workers came to be employed by non-state-owned companies. Finally, in the third phase, large numbers of entrepreneurs piled in, creating a tipping point as a self-reinforcing private sector constituency emerged. Officials relaxed their rules to accommodate but also to regulate the embryonic private sector realities. This bottom-up process was by no means easy for those pushing it from below. In fact, starting a private business in China has been far riskier than doing so in the United States. The hazards of business failure are higher in China than in the United States, according to 2 analysts who drew data from China's State Statistical Bureau annual survey of industrial firms. This survey targets all state-owned enterprises and private companies with an annual sales revenue of at least 5 million yuan. In the entry and exit rates for the surveyed companies from 1999 to 2006, we see an average annual entry rate of 25.8% and an average annual exit rate of 18.6%, where exit is defined as a registered business ceasing to exist. By comparison, the comparable entry and exit rates for U.S. companies are only half as high as in China. For the period from 1999 to 2011, for instance, one study found that the annual entry and exit rates in the United States were consistently less than 12% and 10%, respectively. Many factors in this early reform era account for the high rate of business failure rate in China, and as we detail below, 4 of these proved particularly problematic: institutional void, anti-business ideology and regulation, political uncertainty, and rent-seeking and windfall profits. These factors point to the barriers and obstacles that the leaders of China's private companies have had to endure and surmount as they worked to create their own management model. Institutional void. The first nettlesome factor was what sociologists often term an